Hi guys, and welcome to my showcase and tutorial for Skill Tree. Skill Tree is a progression system for your server that encourages players to leave their base and harvest resources, kill NPCs, and engage with one of 65 plus XP sources in order to level up their character. So the idea of Skill Tree is that players will be able to obtain XP from various different sources, level up their characters and use and accumulate skill points, which can then be inserted into skill nodes, allowing the player to receive abilities and perks. There are a large number of different skills and trees available, allowing for really unique builds to be made on your server. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, so there are a number of ways of obtaining XP in Skill Tree. There's actually around 65 different sources at the time of the recording. Some of these methods include cutting trees, mining rocks, killing NPCs, fishing, completing quests, crafting. There's loads and loads. You'll also notice in the bottom right corner I have an XP bar, which is displaying my current XP, the XP required for the next level, and my current level. Now when I hit a tree, you'll see that I'm accumulating 8 XP per hit. That's little the pop-ups coming up at the top of my screen there, as well as the XP bar increasing and the bar moving. Now on the final hit, you'll also notice that the XP value changes. That's because hitting a tree versus chopping a tree down will yield different values to encourage players to finish off nodes as quickly as possible. And it's the same thing for mining. So whenever I mine a node, you'll see that the XP changes. If I kill a boar, I also get different XP values as well. And each type of animal and NPC and resource node all have different XP values, and they're all configurable. So you can really adjust how your progression works on your server. There are also custom XP methods as well with other plugins, such as Survival Arena. So if you win a game of Survival Arena, which is one of my event plugins, you can receive XP as a reward. Bot respawn, so if you kill a specific NPC within bot respawn, you can set different XP values for different types of XPs, for different types of for bots, based on their profile. Same thing with the NPC spawn plugin as well, which is the one used for a lot of the event-based plugins, such as Convoy and Harbor Event and all them. Now there are also yield modifiers that have actually added to this 1.3.0 version. And what that is basically it allows Skill Tree to kind of act as a 2x, 3x type plugin for your server. So basically, if you wanted a 3-time server, you can set the multiplier in Skill Tree to be 3 times, and any sort of harvesting you do with that modifier applied will automatically basically give you those extra resources. And the benefit of doing it is that if you wanted to add additional resources onto your multipliers onto those resources, and that's kind of how you do it. So, for example, if you wanted the mining or the woodcutting skill to give you 100% bonus, it would be 100% off of the modified or the multiplied yield value as opposed to the vanilla rates. There's also an XP loss system in this plugin, so you can see down the bottom. Obviously, we've got the XP bar, which is also clickable, which brings up the menu, by the way. The XP bar, you can see that if I was to die, I would actually lose a percentage of this level. So there's a couple of different calculations that can be done from. It can be based off the percentage of the XP the player has, or it can be based off the percentage of the level. So for example, if I died and it was based off of the level, I would lose, and it was set at 20% loss, I would lose whatever the math is of 20% into 612. Whereas if I died and it was based off of my current XP, I'd lose 20% of 454. Now there's also a new option being recently added, which is XP debt. Now if a player falls below the threshold of the minimum of their level, they accumulate a debt, and the debt will simply add up the more and more they lose until they work it off, and then as soon as they work it off, they can start gaining XP again. There are also nighttime modifiers as well. So if you if you want, you can have your players increase or decrease their yield at night time depending on your preference. And skill tree handles all of that. And the other one is rested XP. And you'll see here there's an option under the menu called rested XP pool. And the rested XP pool is basically it will accumulate XP as players are offline for every hour that they're offline. So when they reconnect to the server, it'll calculate what their XP, what the rested XP pool is, and it'll simply give them kind of like a catch-up mechanic. So if they're offline for a period of time, they can get back on, and it'll give them an XP bump. So by default, it's 25% until that pool gets depleted. So it's kind of again, a catch-up mechanics of players who sort of go offline for the night and come back in the morning. And the final one is Powertool modifiers. Now there are different types of modifiers with Powertools, but a perfect example is the Amateur Miner perk, which you can see here. Jackhammer bonus yield modifier is -75%. So what that means is for any additional yield I would get with my yield perks, the Jackhammer is going to kind of receive a 75% penalty to that. So if I was going to get an extra 100 wood from a tree because of my yields, I would only get 25 extra wood from that tree because I used a chainsaw, or same thing for a stone node. There's also a luck modifier and an XP modifier. So if I was to use a chainsaw to harvest this tree, I would get 75% less XP per tick. But the idea is that the chainsaw obviously procs a lot more than an axe would, so it's kind of that trade-off there. Anyway, that's it for the XP side of things. So we're going to get into the skill tree. I'm going to explain a little bit more about how that works, and we'll go through each of the trees. Okay, so there are a number of ways you can access the skill tree. The first way is via a chat command here by typing in /st. That brings it up. The second option is by clicking on the XP bar, which also brings it up as well. Now you'll see here there's a couple of options. First one is obviously we got the tree that you're currently in, which by default is always mining. And then you've also got player settings, ultimate settings, and you've got the option to respec. Now I'll explain what each of these things are now. So respecing is basically when you've invested skill points into any of these trees. You can actually respec and reset the points you've invested to get a refund on the points. Now doing so by default will incur a scrap cost. This can also be adjusted to be economics or server rewards as well, depending on your requirements there, but by default it's set to scrap. And it's set to 30 scrap per skill point invested. So if you were to respec 10 points, it would cost you 300 scrap to do so. There are also permission modifiers to override these values as well, and I've also added a option to add multipliers to make respecing more and more expensive each time you do it. So players don't just kind of respec as they want to change from woodcutting to mining. There's also the player settings menu here as well, which when you click on you can see there's different options. It allows players to toggle XP indicators, toggle the pump bar so it's not visible, reposition the pump bar if that option is selected in the config, toggle their extra pockets HUD on, which is a little bag. One of the perks gives you an actual storage bag, and receive notifications when sort of buff triggers happen, such as crafting procs and duplicate procs and everything else. Then we have the ultimate settings, which is only populated when you actually have an ultimate unlocked. Now the trees are broken down into 4 rows. So you've got row 1, which is instantly accessible, doesn't require any skill points to be invested. You then have row 2, or level 2, which actually requires you to have skill points. So if I attempt to unlock this particular node, it's going to say I don't have enough points in the previous tier. So this one actually requires at least 5 points in the previous tier to unlock. This one here is level 3, requires 10 points in the previous tiers to unlock. So if I had 5 points here, 5 points here, I could unlock level 3. Whereas if I had 5 points here and 5 points here, again I can unlock level 3. And the final one, which is the ultimate, which there are only one per for most of the trees. This is only unlocked when we have 25 points unlocked. So if I had 25 points invested in this tree, this node becomes available to unlock. Assigning points is quite simple. Let me just give myself some skill points. So I now have 102 skill points available. Now if I wanted to unlock a node, I'd left click on it and I'd click level up. And you see as I level it up, I hear a sound effect, and every time I level it up again, the sound effect changes. So whenever I unlock it, it makes a different effect, and you can see the total buff accumulation on the right hand side. Now these ones here actually do the same thing, so they increase our mining yield and they do stack. So when I unlock this one here, you can see my mining yield is actually increasing. Now if I put my 10th point into this skill here, the bottom row unlocks. And I can continue doing this with as many skill points as I have until I hit that 25 skill point mark, unlocking the ultimate. Now when I unlock the ultimate, it'll show me what the ultimate does. You can locate nodes within 200 meters using a chat command once every 60 seconds. I can toggle it off and on in order to get that notification again. Yeah, so that's kind of how that works. There are also level rewards. Actually, I'll do a respec real quick to show you how that works. Now, because I've invested 26 points, it's going to require me to pay 390 scrap. So when I click respec, it confirms that I want to do that. I click yes, and you can see my points have been refunded, and my total points have no longer been invested. So that's how that works. And then finally, level rewards, which are basically more orientated for leveling. So as you increase your player level, you can actually configure commands to be run when a player achieves a certain level. So if I set it to, if I add a command to be run when I hit level 10, as soon as my character hits level 10, it will run that command. That could be, adding to a giving the player permission, or giving them an item like a trophy, or whatever you want to do. So kind of the sky's the limit there. And so there is one more thing, which is permission-based trees. So you can see here that we have a number of different trees available, all with different skills. You can actually create your own trees and populate it with whatever you like. So you can have different nodes that already exist in here, or you can create your own custom nodes using permission, which I'm going to cover later on in the video. So anyway, let's get into the different trees available, and we'll do a bit of a deep dive into each of the trees and how they kind of stand at the moment. Okay, so we're going to look at the trees. First off we have is mining tree. Now this one here is predominantly for increasing your mining yields and pretty much everything to do with mining, obviously. So the first perk we have here is the amateur miner perk, which is an increase in your mining yield. So whenever you mine something, you receive more of the resource that you're extracting, such as sulfur, stone, high quality metal, metal ore, that sort of thing. There are 3 variants of this in the tree by default, which includes the amateur miner, adept miner, and expert miner, all of which have different percentages per level, and they all accumulate. So you can see here that if I level up these ones here, the mining yield on the right hand side will remain the same. So will change. We have the stroke of luck chance, which is a 5% chance per level to spawn a new node after a node is destroyed. So if you mine a node out, there's a 5% chance that node will respawn for you. We have instant mining, which gives you a 5% chance per level to instantly mine out a node on hit. So that was basically whenever you hit a rock, it rolls a chance. And if that chance is successful, it will simply remove the rock and give you the resources that you would normally have received. We have the refiner perk, which gives you a 10% chance per level to refine mined ore. So if you're hitting like a sulfur node or a metal node, instead of receiving metal ore, you receive metal frags. Instead of receiving sulfur ore, you receive sulfur. Mining luck is a 1% chance to receive an item when you mine out a node. So whenever you finish mining a node, this will roll 1% chance per level to get access to a loot table, and that loot table is fully configurable in the config. So you can add anything you like to that loot table. By default, mining, woodcutting, and everything else all share the same loot table. By default they have the same things in their loot table, but the loot tables are individual. And robust pickaxe is a 10% decreases the durability losses of your mining equipment by 10% per level. So, and that includes power tools. And then the ultimate for the mining tree is Stone Sense. So this little perk here will, let me just unlock it. When you get access to it, You can see here we'll locate nodes within 200 meters when you type in /locate nodes. So you can see here that we have sulfur, stone, metal, you know, all these other ones. These positions will remain for as long as for about 60 seconds, but they don't update when things get mined out. So the information is taken at the point in time, but isn't updated. You can see here that it's still showing metal, and that's, yeah, that can be triggered once every 60 seconds by default. But again, like everything in this plugin, it's configurable. So that is the mining tree in a nutshell. There you go. There's a example of a instant mine perk proc. So that's the mining tree in a nutshell. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to look at the woodcutting tree now. So I'm going to access the skill tree, navigate to the woodcutting skill tree, and you can see here we've got a number of nodes. Very similar to the other resource gathering trees. You have a yield increase, a couple of few yield increase perks, such as amateur woodcutter, adept woodcutter, and expert woodcutter, which will increase your wood received when hitting a tree. So I'll just level all those up. So it caps out at 112.5% by default, but again, like everything else in this plugin, it's configurable. We have instant woodcutting, which is a 5% chance per level to instantly chop down a tree. So if it's calculated every single time you hit the tree. We have woodcutting luck, which is very similar to mining luck. When you level it up, it will give you a 5% chance per level to receive a random item when cutting a tree down. So when you completely cut a tree down, it rolls the chance, and then you might receive one of the items on the loot table. Again, the loot table is very customizable, and you can add or remove whatever you like from there. We have chimney, which gives you a 10% chance to receive charcoal while wood cutting, and this is an additional item. It's not like you're burning the wood, so you'll actually receive additional charcoal when cutting down trees. Tree regrowth is a 2.5% chance per level to respawn a chopped tree. So when a tree falls down, it rolls the chance to see if that tree will respawn in the same position with the same tree type. Robust axe is a 10% durability loss decrease per level for your axe, and the ultimate is deforestation, which admittedly is one of my favorite. So let's just level up a few things here and see what happens. So I'm gonna show you how the perk works. We go to a tree that's nice and close to other trees. This one looks good. So the way deforest will work is when you hit a tree down, it's going to give me a lot of wood. There's still sulfur falling to the ground because my inventory's full, but it knocks all the trees around you down. And that happens every single time. It also works with the instant chop perk, so as you can see, that just fired off then. So again, lots of wood. Really good wood gathering skill, this one. So anyway, that's it for the woodcutting tree. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to look at the skinning tree next. Let me just kill this bear. Alright, so we're going to open up the skinning tree. Alright, so the skinning tree, much like the other resource trees, has 3 yield perks available to it. So I'm going to level these up. You can see here it's 112.5% by default, but again, you can change this just like you can any other tree. We have the skilled tree, and this one here will simply give you a yield increase for anything you harvest from an animal, such as animal fat, bones, leather, wolf heads if you're that way inclined as well. So yeah, it increases quite a lot. You then have the skilled tracker perk, which allows you to use the /track command. This will kind of give you the direction of nearby animals. So we'll unlock that one there, and I'll actually run that one. So you can do /track, and it's going to say you see old animal tracks leading to the south. Now there are three different types of messages you'll get. You'll see sort of, yeah, I'll have to show them in the config, but old means that it's very old means that it's old means that it's quite far away. It's over 50 meters away, so kind of gives you a general direction of what the closest animal is. It doesn't necessarily show you exactly where it is though. Hence why it's a tier 1 skill. Robust knife is a 10% reduction in skinning equipment durability loss, along with steel knife, which gives you a potential of 100% for your basically any sort of knives. So not, knife, bone knife, that sort of thing. Instant Skinner gives you a 5% chance to instantly skin out an animal. We have Survival Chef, which is a 10% chance to receive your meat cooked rather than raw while skinning. Skilled Hunter, which increases damage done to animals by 10% per level. And then we have Skinning Luck, which gives you a 3% chance per level to receive a random item when you skin out a corpse. Again, it's the same sort of principle as woodcutting, mining, luck. It is just simply a loot table that's in the config, which you can add and remove the items from, and it'll roll on those tables. And then finally we have the Primal Identity. Now this one here is actually quite an in-depth skill. What this will do is allow players, when they kill an animal that's listed here, to take on they'll receive a temporary buff for killing those animals. So we'll go and we'll kill each of those animals and we'll see what kind of happens. So we'll start with the chicken. You can see here you feel the power of the chicken flow through you. You can no longer receive fall damage. So this basically prevents you from receiving fall damage when falling. We'll go boar next. You can see you may find some useful stuff when collecting wild berries and mushrooms. So this is another loot table perk that players get access to temporarily. And whenever they pick mushrooms or berries, there is a chance that they will receive random items. I'm fairly sure it's either... Yeah, they'll receive random items. So, again, kind of cool. We have a wolf. Healing feels more potent with friends around. So basically, whenever you have whenever you're near squad mates, your healing is increased by a certain percentage. And all these values are configurable as well in the config. So we're going to spawn bear. Scientists cower in fear and will not engage you unless engaged. So this one here will give you a temporary buff where scientists basically won't engage you unless you attack them first. So you can see here he's not doing anything to me. As soon as I hit him, he doesn't like that. We have polar bears. This one here gives you an overshield. You can see just above my little toolbar there. Whenever I take damage, it's going to take from the overshield until the overshield is exhausted. Then it's going to continue on the damage with myself. And again, it's only a temporary thing. So once that overshield's it's gone, that's it. But also, if I run out of time, it will also go away. All the time values are configurable as well. Now this one here is the stag. You can see here that when I killed the stag, I lost the polar bear perk as well. You feel incredibly alert for nearby player threats. So basically, whenever you're near another player, so I don't know if I'll trigger with an NPC player. But I think it's every 5 or 10 seconds, it's going to update the player that someone's nearby. Yep, there you go. And it actually shows you the last known detection. So if that player was to move, that detection area would still stay the same. And it only picks up on non-squad mates as well. So you can disable the ability to see, kind of wall hack there. But again, and you can also change how often this thing polls as well. So if you don't want it to be every 10 seconds, you want it to be every 30 seconds, you can change that as well. But it kind of gives the players that edge of, when they're looting monuments or doing a bit of PvP, they can kind of get their known locations, or they can see if someone's sneaking up on them potentially. So I think that's all the animals, all the land animals there. So yeah, so that's the skinning skill tree. Pretty straightforward. I will just show you just give myself a knife real quick, and we'll just harvest one of these animals and see what we get. Yeah, so basically getting a heap of there you go. That triggered their skin out, which just instantly skinned it out. And you can see I'm getting XP from this as well. But yeah, you get lots of lots of materials there. Got some cooked bear meat, some raw bear meat. Like I said, the proc there for yeah. So lots of food. Yeah, you'll never starve with the skinning perk. Anyway, let's respec and let's move on to the next skill. Okay, so the next buff we're going to explore is the harvesting skill tree. Well, next skill tree, sorry. So this one here is for both farming and map collectible entities, and it's split up between amateur farmer and amateur harvester. The primary difference is a harvester is responsible for anything that the map spawns. Farmer is responsible for anything that the player creates or plants. So amateur harvester will give you a 10% yield increase per level for wild collectibles, such as including things like diesel, hemp, pumpkins, potatoes. There are a blacklist of items that you can remove from this perk though, if you don't want diesel and that sort of thing being duplicated or increase its yield, you can remove that. This one here is again for grown things such as berries, potatoes, hemp, all that sort of thing. Simply increases the yield for that. We have extra pockets, which is a bag, basically like a storage bag that players can use. They get access to it by using the /pouch command. You can see I've kind of appeared here, and I can open it up, and I've got a little, kind of like a little bag that I can use. I can access it once every 10 seconds, just really for performance. But you can change the delay. You can see here it gets added, and it's pretty straightforward. It just simply creates, it destroys and then recreates the items as you open the bag, like most bag icons, bag plugins do. So that's the extra pockets buff. We also have fishing luck, which one gives you a chance to roll on the loot table for when you catch fish. We have fisherman, which gives you a 10% chance to receive an additional fish when you catch it. And then for the ultimate, we have one of the best ultimates in the game, botanist. This skill gives you the ability to set the genetic composition of plants you deploy. Now there are some potential restrictions around this for the servers who don't want people to be able to abuse this. Basically what you can do is you can set a cooldown, so players can only do it once every 10 minutes or an hour or 24 hours, depends on how you want to do it. So basically for as long as the plugin is loaded, the cooldown will exist. As soon as you reload the plugin, the cooldowns are wiped and people can just do it again, but yeah, keep that in mind. But basically this plugin, this particular buff lets players do /set genes and set the genetic composition of their plants. So let's see what it looks like. You can see here we can actually change the growth and the yield and the the hardiness and everything else. So we can do GGG YYY, and what this allows us to do is it allows us to, when we deploy a seed, it sets the genetics for us, and it works for any type of seed. And again, there are cooldowns that you can put on there if you don't want people to be able to just go willy-nilly planting these, but yeah, kind of expedites the whole genetics sort of side of things for players who want to kind of go really deep into the harvesting tree. So it is pretty straightforward tree, but again, another really powerful one. So a lot of my players like the harvesting skill because the yield, like the harvestable yields from collectibles, is quite huge, as well as the XP that you get from it. So anyway, that's it for the harvesting tree. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to look at the medical tree next. Now the medical tree is it's probably by far one of the favorites on my server. This one here allows for different types of healing or damage prevention effects, as well as a really amazing ultimate. So let's go through it. The first one we have is Bandage Expert, which is simply a maximum level of 1, and will simply double the amount of healing you receive from bandages. So instead of receiving 5 health per bandage, you receive 10. Radiation Expert will reduce your radiation damage by 10% per level. And then we have Revitalization, so this skill will regenerate health by 0.1 HP per level per second, so up to a maximum of 0.5 hit points per second. Now if I unlock that, you'll see my health will start periodically ticking up. And then we have a deactivation delay, which means if I take any damage, activation delay, so if I take any damage, it's going to put me on cooldown for this period of time. And again, this is all configurable. We have Flame Retardant, which basically reduces the amount of fire damage I take from all heat sources, including campfires, helicopter rockets, and all that other shit. We have Accident Evasion, which reduces your fall damage by 10% per level. We have Battle Medic, which allows you to basically revive a down player for 10% of their health per level. So if they're down at 5% and only have 5 health on them, and you have this maxed out at 50%, they come up with 50% health filled. So really good if you're running in a team. Rugged Up prevents you from taking any cold damage, and this is an IO buff, which means it's simply on or off. So you will no longer take cold damage. Perfect balance is the other part of accident evasion, which brings you up to 100% full damage reduction, so you no longer take full damage. Second wind is a 5% chance per level of immediately getting up after being wounded, so as soon as you enter the wounded state, the next game tick you will basically be brought up to your and with a bit of help, like with all of your metabolism attributes removed, such as radiation and cold and all that other fun stuff, as well as with a little bit of health. But then if you die again, you're dead, so there's that. We have the Messiah Ultimate, which is gives you a 50% chance to resurrect at your last place of death. So when you die, you'll be given a little information screen. So let's level this up, and then we will die. Now I can't die to suicide because I've got it disabled for suicide by default, so people can't just die and then respawn, you know, willy-nilly. So let's get a bear to do the job for us. You can see here that my regeneration stopped as well. So once I die, you can see I've now got a resurrect button at the bottom right corner of my screen there. So I can either press respawn or I can press resurrect, and resurrect will roll me a chance to potentially respawn where I died. Yep, we were successful this time, so probably not a good idea to do it while there's a bear on your corpse, but that's how the perk works. And there is a cooldown, so if you die and then die again, you can't just instantly do it again. You actually have to, you know, yeah, you actually have to wait. So that is the harvesting ultimate. Just got my back on. Yeah, that's the medical ultimate. Sorry, and the medical tree. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. Okay, our next perk is the combat tree. So I'm just going to respec my skills real quick so I can. Cool. All right, so next one is going to be the combat trait. So this one here is obviously all about combat. Now it's broken up into PvE, and there are some PvP specific skills as well, which we'll go into in just a moment. But let's start from level 1. So level 1 includes Animal Tamer, which gives you a 10% damage reduction from animals per level. And the animals listed are here, which again can be, this is simply a reference of the config. If you want animals removed, you can remove the animals. Duelist, give you a 10% damage reduction per level when someone hits you with a melee weapon. So if anyone, like, you know, any zombies or anything like that, just 10% reduction per level. Maintenance is reduces the durability loss of your gear entirely, so everything that you're wearing or you're holding that would lose durability is reduced by 20% per level. This one is actually quite powerful. A lot of servers do like to change this one down, and I also recently added a blacklist, which is it allows you to add exclusions where particular things won't be affected by this buff, because there was an infinite XP glitch where people were using the swipe card to gain XP and then never losing the swipe card, so that was a bit of an oversight on my hand. So we've got the defense research on level 2, which is a decrease the damage done from scientists by 5% per level. We have scientific breakthrough, which increases the damage done to human NPCs by 5% per level, and that should include Zombie Horde from the Zombie Horde plugin, any sort of human, any sort of scientists and tunnel dwellers and everything else. Resourceful is a 2% chance per level of not using a bullet while firing, so effectively increasing your magazine size by 10% and giving you 10% free bullets. And then we have our PvP perks. We have Lucky Shot, which is a 1% chance to per level to do a crit, which is a 30% damage. Assassin, which is a 1% flat 1% per level damage increase, and Guarded, which is a 2% per level defense increase for PvP at damage only. And then the ultimate is Vampiric Tendencies. This one here will heal you for 1% of the damage done to certain enemies. Enemies include scientists, animals, and players. You can disable any and all of these, so you probably don't want to disable all of them. So you can disable any one of these you like. If if you don't want healing to be applicable to players, just remove players and it'll just simply be scientists and animals. But really simple plugin, really simple perk. You'll see that when I shoot things such as bears, I receive a little bit of health. And there are blacklists of weapons that can't trigger this proc, or that can't proc this ability. So that's something that's in the config as well, which we'll cover a little bit later. So, but look, pretty simple tree, very powerful. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're looking at the buildcraft tree next. This one here is specifically around building and crafting, funnily enough. So we'll look at the top the level 1 perks first. We have Amateur Tinkerer, for which there are 3 variations. There are Amateur Tinkerer, Adept Tinkerer, and Expert Tinkerer, all of which increase your crafting speed, and all of which will increase it to 100%, which will effectively give everything you make instant craft, or craft within 0.1 second. We have Thrifty Renovator, which gives you a 5% chance per level of receiving your building materials back when upgrading blocks. So really handy if you're obviously doing a big base build. Can really save a lot of resources there. Primitive Expert simply makes primitive weapons have no durability loss, so you don't lose durability on bows and stone axes and everything else. Thrifty Tinkerer gives you a 5% chance per level to receive your components back when crafting. So again, a really good sort of potential refund and components over there. Research gives you a 5% chance per level of receiving a scrap back when researching. That's only through the research bench, not through the tech tree. So if you research through the research bench, there's a 5% chance per level that the scrap will remain in the scrap slot when the research completes. Blast Furnace is a 10% chance per level, 10% chance per level to smelt ore when a log is burnt. Now this is in addition to the normal smelting rates, and this is why it will work with furnace. Furnace plugins that increase the smelt rate. This one here will simply burn an extra material whenever a log is burnt, or has a chance to burn an extra ore whenever a log is burnt. So I believe logs burn faster in some cases. Logs burn faster than the resources in the oven, so it does speed it up a bit. Thrifty Duplicator is a 3% chance per level of duplicating an item when crafting. So if you craft anything that's not on the blacklist, and again the blacklist is configurable, but by default things like gunpowder are on there. If you craft gunpowder, this will never roll, it will never happen. But if you craft things like an AK-47 or a semi-automatic or any sort of clothing, there's a 3% chance per level that you will receive 2 of those items instead of 1. And then we have the Blacksmith perk, which has been recently fixed up in 1.3.0. Will no longer break your chainsaws, hopefully. This skill will reset the durability items to max when repairing an item. So if you repair something like a chainsaw or a jackhammer or basically any item, the little orange max durability bar will be removed and the item's condition will be set to max. So yeah, another really cool one to keep your items. And the ultimate for this one here is Access Granted, which I'm not gonna lie, it's probably one of the coolest ultimates on here. This one simply lets you use any color swipe card on any color reader. So let's grab a key card. Grab a green key card. Let's try and find a higher tier monument that I actually know. Not a great map for it. Bugger it, we'll have a crack at military tunnels. So basically what this one lets you do is we can sorry, let me just we can pop a fuse in here. You think I've never done this before? Okay, yeah, pop a fuse in there, and then we can go for a stroll down here to the blue card. And oh, that's a green card, sorry. Go down here to the blue card. I'm sure I've missed it. Oh, sorry, that's right, it's over here. Okay, so we're at the blue card now, and we can simply grab a green card. And it works. You can see it loses durability just like normal. And yeah, we use a green card and a blue card reader. So basically, just means the player will only ever need green cards to progress. So a pretty simple one, but again, really powerful, especially if you've got people who like to run a lot of content. So that is pretty much it for the buildcraft tree. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to look at the scavenging tree next. A scavenging tree is basically all around scrapping and recycling and everything else. So to start with, on level 1 we have Looter, which gives you a 10% chance per level to receive extra scrap when smashing a barrel. We have Barrel Smasher, which is one of the most popular perks in Skill Tree. Gives you the ability to one-hit smash a barrel with any weapon, doesn't matter what it is. And Loot Magnet, which is probably the second most popular, or third most popular perk on Skill Tree, which allows you to move, when you destroy a barrel, automatically moves the loot from the barrel to your inventory if it's maxed out, or it rolls a chance if each time the barrel is broken if you don't have it maxed out. So really cool, like really cool thing. For example, if I got a rifle, I can just find a barrel. You can see here it just puts it straight in my inventory, or it drops it at my feet if it doesn't have any room. So really cool, really powerful perk, that one. Yeah, so that's how that one works. And that works with the any sort of additional scrap that gets put in the barrel, and any items like, you know, from epic loot or item perks that get added to containers like that. Loot Magnet will move it all into the inventory. Lucky Looter is the first level on the tier 2 side. You can see you have 5% chance per level of finding extra scrap in crates. Electronics Luck is a 2% chance of finding electronics in crates when you loot them. And Component Luck is 2% for components for the same thing. Now this will be any component and any electronic, but there are blacklists that you can add and modify if you don't want certain things being rolled. I believe things like test generators and stuff are already on there, but you can add to it as required. And the way this works is when someone walks up and loots a crate for the first time, it will add that crate to a watch list, which means no other player, any sort of subsequent players who loot that crate, won't get a roll for these perks on that crate. So it's kind of like a once-off thing. And that discourages people from, you know, 5 people looting the crate before actually taking the components out of it to try and maximize the perk procs. So yeah, that's not a thing. Tier 3 we have Component Salvager, which is a 2% chance per level of finding extra components when destroying barrels. We have Electronics Salvager, which is a 2% chance per level of finding extra electronics when destroying barrels. So basically the same as these two, but in barrel form. And then we have Optimize Recycling, which is increases your recycling tick speed by 0.5 seconds per level. Just simply means you recycle twice the speed, because recycle tick rates I think are about 5 seconds. And then the ultimate, which is the Shredder perk. And this is a really cool one. So this will automatically recycle components from barrels when broken. So it'll kind of recycle everything down one level. So if you receive if the pipes are in a barrel, it will turn them into metal frags and scrap. If you have clothing, it'll turn them into whatever the materials that were required for the clothing. And the benefit is this can be toggled on and off. So if you don't want to have your shit recycled, you can just turn it off. And really cool, again, you can use multiple types of weapons for this. So let's just spawn a heap of barrels. Oh, they're not barrels, they're bears. Let's just spawn a heap of barrels. And when I hit this with my Loot Magnet perk and my Shredder perk, you can see here I got a heap of scrap, a heap of materials that were kind of moved into my inventory, and just some other stuff that were thrown around. So yeah, it shreds everything and gives you the raw materials, raw resources. So really cool one. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the scavenging tree. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the vehicles tree next. Now this one here gives you a couple of really cool perks. So the first one here we have is Amateur Rider, and there are 3 variations of this: Amateur, Adept, and Expert Rider, all of which increase your horse speed. Now there's configuration options to allow which type of modifications to the horse are included, such as turning speed, walking, like trotting speed, running speed. But by default it's just simply running speed and, well, I've got one of I think it's walking speed, which are increased by the percentage. So let's unlock all of these, and then we'll jump on a horse and see what experience that, which is crack horse, as my players like to call it. So when you get on, you can see here that our modification is 116 kilometers versus 38, so it's quite quick. And yeah, it is a very quick horse. So it becomes one of the fastest ways to actually get around Rust. The turning probably needs to be turned on, but it handles like a truck. But yeah, and then as soon as you get off a horse or die, or reload the plug-in, all the horses get reverted back. So the next perk on the tree is Yachtman, which decreases the so it allows you to use either a command or mouse 3 depending on your config options. If you've got a very populated server, I highly recommend turning off the ability to use mouse 3 to toggle the turbo on your boat. And this one here increases the boat speed by 20% per level. So makes your boats very quick, noticeably quick. You can play around with this, and you can create your own custom ones that allows this kind of stack if you want as well. But yeah, it's your boats are very quick at 100% speed. Economical Captain will reduce the fuel consumption of a boat by 15% per level. So again, another really big one. We then have some stuff around minicopters as well, which is the Economical Pilot, 3% per level for fuel consumption reduction. So it makes your fuel a bit more economical. And then we have the Hybrid Pilot, which makes it, again, even more economical. So basically reduces your fuel consumption in your helicopters. That includes the Scrappy and the Mini by 50% when maxed out. We have Mechanic, which allows you to repair vehicles instantly at no cost. And this is a really cool one as well. Just instantly repairs the module when hit without any cost at all. So really good if you're really bad at driving, like I am. And then we have the Tank, which reduces damage dealt to your mounted vehicles by 100%. So if you're sitting in a vehicle, whether it be a passenger or flying it, it will stop it from taking damage, or should stop it from taking damage. And again, you can set these values. If you don't want it to be 100%, you can reduce the value down to 80% or 50% or whatever. But yeah, really good for terrible drivers like myself that can just don't know how to drive properly, obviously. Yeah. But then as soon as we get out of this thing and give it the old college boom, it will take damage. As you can see, yep. Yeah. So that is the vehicle tree. It is quite simple, but really good if you enjoy getting around in, things that aren't your legs. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're looking at the cooking tree next, and the cooking tree is quite bare at the moment because there isn't too much that can be done with cooking. This is a first example of permission-based nodes, which I'll be getting to in just after we've covered all the different tree types. So the first perk we have on here, and the only perk we have on level 1, is Easily Satisfied, which increases the amount of calories and hydration you receive by 20% per level when eating food. Obviously it's required to max out to get to the next level. We then have Iron Stomach, and Iron Stomach prevents you from being ill when eating things that aren't good for you, such as raw meat or human meat or poisoned or rotten food, if they have it on your server. We have Glutton, which increases the calories and hydration by 20% per level, so it increases our maximum calories and hydration. And we have Frugal Rationer, which increases the or gives you a 10% chance to not consume an item when consuming it. So if I've got teas and cooking materials and everything else, it won't consume them. And this works with the cooking recipe meals as well. So if I have a meal that I've cooked up with the cooking plugin, this will also work and potentially refund that. And then with our permission-based system, so this is a simple skill I added, and this is actually one of the test skills that you can add by running a command in chat. It should be available on the sales page, and this will add this to your config to give you an example of how to actually add your own permission-based nodes. And you can make the nodes do different things at different levels as well. So you can see here I've got a maximum of 2 levels for this particular node. Level 1 is going to unlock instant cooking, which means that for my cooking plugin, I can make meals instantly. And then level 2 will allow me to will give me access to both instant cooking and free cooking. So I can cook things for free. So if I'm using the cooking plugin, I can cook things for free, which is a really terrible thing. You never want to give your players that, but for the purposes of this example, that's kind of how it is. So anyway, we'll cover custom skill nodes and custom skill trees after we've covered the a few more of these sort of perks. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to be covering the underwater tree in this next section. So the underwater tree is to do with things out in the ocean and beneath it. So we'll just get straight into it. So the first one here is Cage Diver. This one here gives you a 10% chance per level to... reduces the damage received from sharks by 10% per level. And this one here reduces it by a further 10% per level, so you can effectively nullify damage from sharks with both of these combined. Guild gives you the ability to breathe underwater for 60 seconds per level. And you can see here that if I head over to some water and turn my God mode off, you'll see that my little lung icon at the top right corner there starts counting down. I don't actually lose any oxygen, as you can see here, or if I do, it gets put straight back up. So it gives you the ability to kind of dive and not actually have to use a diving tank. Whenever you surface, it gets reset. So pretty handy one if you like living out in the water. We now have the Shark Veterinarian, so it gives you a 2% chance per level of finding useful items when skinning a shark. So this one here is its own loot table. It can roll any number of items in the loot table there. So 2% chance per level of finding things in that table. And that's whenever you hit a shark, so not when you skin it out entirely. It's when you're actually skinning each hit. Treasure Hunter is a 2% chance per level of finding useful item when looting crates underwater. So it gives you another loot table that you can access for underwater crates specifically. Nimble Fingers gives you the ability to unlock or untie crates instantaneously. So a really cool one. This is just one of those on-off type perks. I'll see if I can actually find an underwater spawn. So I'll just turn this off. So we'll go up to a crate and we just start untying it and it just instantly unties. You can see here. Really simple. Yeah, so one of those really cool things. And then the last one here is Aquatic Combatant, which gives you a 10% damage bump while underwater, and that includes in the underwater labs. So you do more damage to scientists, you do more damage to sharks and other players that are underwater as well. So yeah, really simple one, but again, really powerful if you're planning on being a water rat. So that's it for the underwater tree, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, so our final skill tree is the raiding skill tree, and I'd just like to have a special sort of shout out to the Zombieland guys who basically created the ideas of all of these skill nodes, and for all the support for developing this as well. Been absolutely invaluable, and highly recommend you check out their server. It's Zombieland again. But in the for the raiding tree, we'll go through each of the nodes again. Some really cool ones. But before we get into it, I just want to say that this particular tree has a lot of config options around where it can be used and how it can be used. So it was designed to work specifically with raidable bases for those PvE servers that don't allow raiding, but also for PvP and player bases for those servers that do. So it is very configurable, and there are a lot of options to disable certain things that some servers might not necessarily want running rampant. But let's get into it. So first level we have is Trap Evader. We have we'll reduce the damage taken from traps by 10% per level. We also have Minesweeper, which increases the damage done to traps by 10% per level. Now there are config options to allow for fire damage, such as incendiary rockets, to contribute to this as well, or to exclude them. We have Blast Suit, which is a 20% damage reduction per level for your own explosives. So if you shoot or shoot an explosive at your feet, or running your own grenades, or that sort of thing. If you've got this maxed out, it reduces the damage entirely, and again also reduces from fire, so you can reduce fire damage from your repertoire there. We also have the reliable explosives, which is a 20% per chance per level. So chance per level for a dud explosive to explode anyway. So things like satchel charges and bean cans, if they weren't going to explode, this will make sure they do. Demolitions is a 2% chance per level to have an explosive trigger twice. This excludes munitions from the MLRS ultimate, which I'll get to in just a moment. So if you shoot a rocket, there's a chance that the rocket's going to explode twice. Same for C4, same for everything else. Pressed explosive. This one here increases the blast radius of 10% per level, and then also increases the minimum blast radius of 10% per level. So the blast radius simply means that it will splash in a wider area, so it can damage more walls at once. And the minimum blast radius level means that it'll do more damage in the epicenter of the explosion. Master Thief is a 2% chance per level to open a locked entity. To enable, you simply type in /picklock, and then you attempt to open up a locked entity. And that locked entity can be anything. So cars, doors, chests, TCs, anything you don't have access to. You can potentially pick it and get access to it. It doesn't change the code, doesn't give the code, doesn't whitelist the user. It's just simply a one-time use, and then if they fail the attempt or they succeed on the attempt, it's still a cooldown, so it doesn't matter which one. And any sort of interaction with entities that they have access to already won't trigger this picklock. So if they've got picklock active and they open up a door that belongs to them, it won't actually trigger the picklock. It will only trigger the picklock attempt when they attempt to use something that isn't theirs, that's locked. And then we have the final thing here, which is the Raiding Tree Ultimate, which is by far my favorite node on this entire skill tree. Rain Hellfire. This skill allows you to call in an MLRS strike using the command /strike. By default, the cooldown is 60 minutes, but I will probably up this to about 6 hours, just because it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So let's level this up and have a look. Again, you can completely change how that fist functions. You can change the amount of rockets that actually spawn with this, as well as what can actually be targeted. So you can make it so it can't actually be targeted by raidable bases. It works well with true PvE, where it assigns the creator to the MLRS rocket, so players won't actually be able to damage each other's bases with these MLRS rockets as well. So a lot of thought's gone into it, but let's do it. So if I attempt to do it now and type in /strike, it's going to say I need to have one free inventory slot in my belt. So let's do that, and we'll do it again. So you can see here we've been given some binoculars. These binoculars are locked, hence the little checkered icon, and you can see here they've got the MLRS strike. If I look through this, you'll see a progress bar appears. If I hold down E like this says, you'll see it starts ticking up. Now if I target something that isn't targetable, oh, that obviously was targetable. If I target something that isn't targetable, such as a raidable base or something that isn't a raidable base, if you turn that off, or other things like that, it'll automatically say, hey, yeah, no, we're going to reset the thing. So there's actually a chat command I've built in called reset MLRS, which is reset your current MLRS as an admin. Now let's do it again. If I hold down E and then look up, the progress rate's reset. Now let's launch this baby at this house here. So I'll shoot 6 rockets by default, pinpoint at the target destination, and they go quite far. So if I do it again, let's hit this rock. So the rockets will always spawn above you and then shoot in that direction, as you can see there. Yeah, really cool ultimate, really love it, really happy how it turned out. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to have a lot of fun with it. But yeah, completely configurable. You can change the amount of rockets that spawn, change it so only raid bases can be affected, or yeah, there's a lot that you can do with it. So anyway, that's pretty much it for the tree stuff. Yeah, let's yeah, let's move on. Okay, so in this next section, I'm just going to quickly show you the scoreboard. Now, we have a scoreboard built in. It can be accessed via score or scoreboard. And you can see here that it's based purely off the total XP accumulated for the player. So as more and more players join the server and accumulate XP, the score will forever change and update. There's actually a config option that allows the winner or the player with the highest amount of score, or the highest score when the server resets or wipes, will get additional skill points to start off their next wipe with. So again, really sort of a competitive thing for players to kind of engage in. So really simple, yeah, /score to access. Alright, so we're going to go into the configuration side of things now. This is a fairly long config, but we'll try to nail it out as fast as possible. So, alright, let's get into it. General settings. So you can see they're kind of broken up into different subheadings here. So I'm just going to minimize all these and we can get an idea of what headings and config options we have to play with. There we go. So there's 200 good thousand lines of config we can go through, but thankfully a lot of it works out of the box. Well, pretty much all of it works out of the box, but a lot of it doesn't need to be changed at all. So general settings, we have the points required to unlock tier 2 and tier 3. So I know some servers have gone kind of overboard with increasing these levels and then just decreasing the amount of bonuses players get per level to really extend the grind out. So play with this as you will. And then we have the same value for the ultimates being unlocked as well. Skill points per level. This is how many skill points the player receives per level. Now it's easy to go up from down. So if you're not confident on giving players, 3 or 4 points per level, start it at 2. It's easier to simply change the config to 3 or 4 and reload it. It'll automatically compensate players additional points if they're missing any. But you can't go backwards. So if you go from 2 to 1, then those players have extra points. Maximum points a player can spend. Now this is by default 200. This puts caps and limits on the number of points players can put in their build, which is relevant to the maximum level versus the amount of skill points that a player gets per level. You can set this to 0 to remove the limit entirely, or you can have permission-based overrides like I have here. We have skilltree.vip, which allows for 240 instead of 200, or no limit, which allows for no limit, which is because it's set to 0. Maximum level a player can get to is level 100 by default, but again, you can change this to whatever you like. Allow players to respec their skill points. That gives players access to that respec button. Cost per point to respec, which is 30. The cost per point to respec based on permission. So again, you have permission overrides if you want to make it cheaper for respecs for your VIPs. And you can have as many permissions as you like in there. So an ideal thing would be, being able to add temporary permissions, such as, if they consume this thing, they can respec for free for a period of time. So there's some really cool stuff you can do with that. Currency type to respec, which is either scrap, economics, SIP, or custom. So we can do custom display name, short name, and skin if you want to add your own custom item as the respec item. And this is all case sensitive, so just keep that in mind. Multiple increase after each respec. So multiplier increase. Sorry, this one here will increase the respec costs per level. So it will increase the reset costs for each time the player respecs. So if they respec the first time, it'll be 30 scrap per respec. If we set it to 20%, the next one will be 36 scrap, and the next one will be, I think it goes up by multiples of the percentage. So it'll go up from 20% to 40% to 60% to 80% to 100%. And you can also add a cap as well. So if you don't want it going over 100%, you can set that value to 1.0. And it will be no more than a 100% increase. List of rewards players receive based on level. So I mentioned earlier that you can basically trigger rewards or commands to be given to players when they reach a certain level. So basically all you need to do is just simply have the command here, and then you can have a list of commands under it. So you can have as many commands as you like. That's the wrong. As many commands as you like. So you can say o.grant. We put a ID to represent the player's ID. O.grant user. Sorry, there are lots of use oxide terms. Skill tree dot harvesting. Whatever you want to do. You can see it allows you to kind of add permissions as required. But it is a dictionary, so you need to actually have this is the message that the player will receive. So I'm going to say, you now have access to the harvesting tree. I've seen servers set up like that where they don't allow full access to the skill tree until you achieve a certain level. Which is another way you can kind of lock off content until players get the relevant level to extend the grind. And there's a list of commands that are fired off when the player data is reset. So if the player respecs, or if they if the player data is reset with either with a command or a wipe, if they're online, this is what they receive. Well, these are the commands that are fired. So you do obviously revoke commands, and if every permission you give, you would probably add a revoke permission in there as well, so players are automatically removed from perms. Required players have specific tree permissions to open them. So by default this is set to false. If you set this to true, then players will require permissions to view the trees. So you can see here, if I go on a skill tree, you'll see there's cooking, combat, skinning, scavenging, all these different types of trees. All simply gives access to all trees if you want to cut the middleman out, but if you wanted to make them permission based, then you can. The pump bar settings. So we have the minimum max, so min y, max y, min x, max x values for the pump bar offsets. We also have the anchor points on there if you wanted to anchor it from a different position, if you're familiar with how to do that. We have the color, which is red, green, blue, and then alpha. And we have the color of the pump bar when XP det. So XP det is when players owe XP and they need to work that XP det off. Again, green, red, blue, and then alpha. So alpha is how transparent it is. 1.0 is full color, 0.0 is no color. The font type that we see for the bar, the font size for the bar, and the type that we want to use. So these are examples of formatting for the types. So one basically gives you the current XP versus total XP, and this is the total accumulative XP overall. This one here shows you the current level XP versus the level total XP. And then 3 is how much XP is left with the percentage left to go. So there's by default set to 2, but you can change that as you please. Cache images using skin ID or URL. Highly recommend using skin ID as a server owner because it puts the onus on the player to do all the caching instead of having to rely on the server. Redownload all images to the plugin after it reloads the URL. If you're having image issues with image library, set this to true for a reload, but then make sure you set it back to false because I don't want my Dropbox disabled. So that is the general settings. Moving on to base yield settings. This is a new addition in 1.3.0. Basically, players server owners can set skill tree as the default multiplier for their base yields. So for wood, stone, metal, sulfur, corn, potato, pumpkin, cloth, diesel, animal fat, bones, leather, and fish, you can set a multiplier. So if you want it to be 2 times wood, 2 times stone, 2 times metal, and 2 times sulfur, you can do that. If you want it 2 times everything, just set everything to 2 times. And that basically makes your server a 2x server. And the benefit of doing it through skill tree is that any multiplier, or you can see here, we need to set this to true for it to work, but any multiplier can be added, or will be like any multiplier for like a mining yield or woodcutting yield or skinning yield will be based off the modified values. So instead of basing it off 1,000 stone, we would base it off 2,000 stone. So 100% increase of 2,000 stone is 4,000 stone. So that's how that would work. And I've also added support to allow the plugins to manipulate these on the fly as well. So if I have a plugin which changes it based on, which I do plan on making, changes yields based on the time of day or the biome that players are mining in, it will increase it will adjust the yields accordingly. So we can change that on the fly. Buff settings. So also step 1. Buff settings. This one here is all different types, basically everything to do with buffs that aren't ultimates. So minimum components for the component perk to work, that plays with the component perk will receive, and then the maximum. So basically they'll receive 1 component. That's it. If you wanted to say a random number between 1 and 5, you change that to 5. Minimum electrical components that players receive 1 and 1. Again, minimum max values, you can change that and it'll pick a random number between the two. Minimum additional scrap and maximum additional scrap, so again, change the values as you require. PvP buff critical damage modifier, picks a random value between 0 and the declared value, and equals the damage onto the hit. So for example, if the hit was going to be 50, it would pick a number between 0 and 30%, which is 0.3. So it would, 30, let's just say, well, easy math will say 10%. Let's just say it rolls 10%. It would do 55 damage instead of 50 damage, because it's adding that 10% extra crit on top. Should the loot pickup buff only work with melee weapons? If you only want melee based weapons to work with the loot pickup buff, set that to true. Otherwise, leave it as is. Should we have a maximum distance for the loot pickup buff to work? So if you don't want it to maximum distance, set it to 0. Otherwise, increase it. Allow the loot pickup buff to work with road signs. Set that to true if you want that to be a thing. List of animals for animal resistibility. So this is the animals that will be considered as animals for the purposes of the animal resistibility. Detail of a horse. Details of the horse to change when they have the relevant perks unlocked. So again, that was that whole running faster, max speed, trot speed, turn speed, walk speed. Turn speed might be a good one because the thing turns like a truck when it's really fast, but up to you. Delay health regen perk after taking damage. If you don't want a delay, to set it to 0. Otherwise, so this is the amount of seconds it will be delayed. Delay between attempts at animal tracking. So it's been changed to a fairly performant method now. So I mean, you don't need a delay for performance. It's just more for how often you want players to be able to call this. And again, this is in seconds. List of skins that the rationer perk will not refund. So these are the types of skins that's specifically for cooking. So the types of skins in there that I simply don't want the rationer perk working with. I actually can't remember what these skins are. Check on my workshop really quickly. Oh yeah, that was actually for VIP tokens. So we don't want VIP tokens being refunded when they are consumed. So you can add skins on there. Bag cooldown time, which is how often a player can open up a bag. And then we have the bag prefab, which is the type of bag that we want to model it off. Primitive weapons for the primitive weapons ability. These are all what considered primitive weapons. You can add or remove whatever you like. Harvesting your blacklist. Items listed here will not be affected by the harvesting your perks. So this is where you can add like your diesel and everything else. Whatever the short name is for diesel. So it just has to be the item short name. Prefab short name, sorry. Is it items? No. Actually, pretty sure it's the item short name. List of items that the durability perk will not work with, which is keycard blue, red, and green by default, because if you remove those, you have an infinite XP glitch unless you remove card swipes from the XP list. We then have the raid perk settings, which is all of the information on raid perks. So you get some really cool stuff in here. So trap damage reduction, we have traps blacklist. So basically, any trap prefabs listed in here will be excluded from the this perk, and only allow this buff to work raidable bases. You can set that to true. Settings for trap damage increases. Again, anything on here will be ignored, and we can set the raid base only to true, so it only works at raidable bases. Settings for personal explosive reduction. You can add particular types of explosives that will be ignored again. And we can also make it work with fire explosives such as Molotovs and Ensign rocks. Settings for double explosive chance. So we can add some prefabs which you don't want to trigger that double explosive. And we also only allow this to work in raidable bases if we want to set that to true. Settings for the explosion radius. So prefabs that will be excluded from this, such as particular types of rockets or grenade launchers or whatever you want to add. The difference, do we add the difference to the minimum explosion radius, which increases the epicenter of the explosion. Only allow this buff to work with raidable bases. Again, you can set that to true if you just want raidable bases only. Again, you need to have the raidable bases plugged in though. Setting for lockpickers. This command requires, command required for the player to activate their lockpick ability. Change that to whatever you like. Command after the time after the command has been used before the ability use expires. So the player has 30 seconds to attempt to unlock a locked entity. Otherwise, they lose the ability. And the delay before the lockpicker ability can be used again in seconds. So by default, it's 10 minutes. And you can also make this a requirement for raidable bases. Settings for Douglas explosives only allow this buff to work with raidable bases. True or false? It'll simply do a check to see if it's within the confines of a raidable base bubble and function. If not, then we have underwater breathing settings here. So this is mainly for the anchor, for the icon. So you can change the anchor positioning for the icon to your liking. Okay, all right. So that's the buff settings done. So we're going to go on to the chat settings. Chat command settings. So use mouse 3 to toggle the boat turbo. I turn this off by default because it is not very performant, because you're having to monitor every single input for a player. So it's best to keep this false unless your population is fairly low and you're not running that many plugins. Otherwise, the player can just simply use the /turbo command, which is a lot more performant. Commands to open up the skill tree, so you've got a couple of different command options. You can add or remove whatever ones you like. If there's nothing in there, it will default back to these though. Chat/console commands to open the scoreboard, scoreboard and score, and that's it. XP settings, we have XP loss settings, specifically around losing XP. Allow players to go into XP debt if they lose more XP than their current level would allow. So this simply enables the XP debt system. If you set this to false, the player can never go below their start of their level. Use the player's XP, not the level XP, to calculate the loss. Now again, this is the whole scenario where if a player is sitting at 200 XP out of 600, do we calculate based off the 200 XP value, or do we calculate based off of the 600 XP value? By default, it will calculate using the level, not the player. Death penalties, grace period. Players won't lose XP if they die again within a specific time. So if you want to add a 60-second or a 5-minute grace period, you can. That means the player will not lose XP if they die within that period of time. And then we have basically the percentages for different death types. So you've got PvP deaths, PvE deaths, and suicide deaths. So by default 20, 20, and 0%. And then permission modifiers to override the percentage of those. So 0.5 means that we would reduce these values to 10%, and this one to 0% again, because 0 times 0.5 is 0. Permission to adjust XP gain modifiers. This one here allows you to increase the XP value or the XP gain rate for players. So if you want them to get more XP, like VIPs to get XP at a faster rate, you can say 1.2 would give them a 20% XP buff constantly. How long should the XP be displayed for? This is that XP value which appears on the screen when you hit something and then disappears a second later. Color of the XP text when it's modified. These are all hex colors, so just use a hex color palette if you're not familiar with it. And then color of the XP when it is modified. Prevent XP loss when dying at an event hosted by the event manager. So any of Killy's events, set this to true. Enable XP drop HUD. Enable XP drop HUD for players by default. So that little, again, that little text will appear to be a setting that they see by default. Otherwise, they can just turn it off. Restrict XP gain to the tools listed in their respective tools list. So that means if you add specific tools to whitelists for specific XP sources, only those players will only get XP if they use those particular tools. It's not really something that's used too often now because there's been a lot of changes since this was made, but it's there if you want to use it. Require grown plants to be ripe to provide XP. This is highly recommended. That way people can't just 5-minute farm and get massive amounts of XP in their base. Give XP for crafting ingredients. It requires cooking.cs. This is from my cooking plugin. Highly recommend setting this to false because there's some ingredients on there which don't require very much and can give a decent amount of XP. Use Loot Defender to handle the XP for Bradley APC. So that if you're using the Loot Defender plugin, Bradley it will handle the XP for Bradley, and that's thanks to Nivex. Allow players with God mode to receive XP. So if you don't want your admins receiving XP while they're in God mode, you can set that to false. Decimal places for the XP to be rounded to. If you just want whole numbers, you can set that to 0. Otherwise, if you're happy with 2 decimal places, leave it as 2. List of meals that will not be provide XP requires cooking.cs. So this one here, like for example, the ingredient bag in the cooking plugin, won't give players XP. Experience sources. So this is where you can change all the XP values for the sources, but you have node hit, tree hit, skill, so skin hit, collection wild plant, collect wild, collect grown, building blocks. I highly recommend leaving that as 0 because there's a number of exploits that players can do with stability that just really wrecks that. Fish caught, crafting, all that sort of stuff. So you can change this to however you like, to whatever you like. We have our nighttime settings. Modify XP gained at nighttime. So 1.0 is a standard amount. If you wanted to make XP 2, so XP 2 times at nighttime, you can set that to 2.0. Modifier for woodcutting yields, mining, skinning, harvesting. Yep. And should the harvesting yield increase include player-grown plants? By default is false. Allow players to move their XP bar. True. This one here is simply allow them to use either the slash move bar or the go into the options and press the move bar icon in the skill tree menu. Next on the list is wipe and wipe and plugin update settings. So do we want to erase all the data on a wipe, which wipes everything? So if you wipe weekly but you want your skill tree to be a monthly thing, set this to false. If you want your skill tree to wipe whenever your server wipes, set this to true. Erase extra pocket storage on wipe. So if you want everything in the player's extra pocket storage to be taken away when the server wipes, leave that as true. Refund skills points on the server wipe. So basically this gives the players a free respec when they respec when the server wipes. Alright, so the next option is give the player with the highest XP bonus skill points next wipe. So this is basically the player who has the highest amount of XP, they will get some extra skill points next wipe if this is set to true. And this is the amount of XP that the amount of skill points that they'll get if they are fortunate enough to win. Automatically add new skill trees from the default config and skill nodes. This means if I release an update and it's got some cool new shit in it, you can automatically get it added to your configs. Otherwise, if you're making changes and changing names and everything else, then it's best to set this one to false. Starting skill tree points is 0. So if you want players to actually start with some skill points at level 0, you can add the amount of skill points you'd like them to start with. Moving on to rested XP settings. This is basically when players go AFK, or so when players go offline, will they gain XP? Set this to true if you want them to. No, so they'll gain rested XP values. Set this to true if you want that to be the case. Rested XP pools will accumulate per hour while offline, so 1,000. And the way rested XP works is when a player is offline and they have, they accumulate, say 10,000 XP, so being offline for 10 hours. The next 10,000 XP that player earns will be at an accelerated rate based on this next config value, which is here. By default, 25%. So if a player was going to earn 100 XP, they would instead earn 120 XP, and that 125 XP, sorry, and that 125 XP would be deducted from their rested XP value until it's gone, and then they get back to normal rates. Maximum XP a player can have in their rested pool, by default, it's 25,000. Rested XP pools wipe on, so reset XP pools on wipe. It's probably good to set this to true, because yeah, it's not good. If you probably want that stuff to be reset. Modifiers based on permission to adjust the rested XP values, so 100% increase and 0 is no increase. So rested XP 10%. So this one means that players who have this permission will gain rested XP at a faster rate while offline. So if they're VIPs or whatever else. So tools and blacklists and whitelist settings. So we have a global blacklist. So these ones here will give no XP benefits and basically not work with anything else, which is the Bone Club, the most abusable items in skill tree. Blacklisted parts from components and electrical luck abilities. So that's just a combined list. Chassis, glue, bleach, duct tapes, sticks, all that sort of shit. Generators. Add whatever you like onto that. Powertool modifiers, chainsaw and jackhammer. One basically equals full value and XP, and 0 is nothing. So you can see here we've got it set to 25%. So yield, XP, and luck for all three types. Play with these values as you will. Extra pocket blacklist. Disallow items that match. So basically, if you don't want certain things being put into the extra pocket storage compartment, you can add these items to the blacklist. Extra pockets whitelist. So if you only want certain items to be allowed in the extra pockets storage, you can add items here, and any item that gets attempted to be moved into here into the pocket that doesn't match this list will be removed. The extra pockets button anchors. These are just the offset positions. You can adjust them as you like. A blacklist of items that will not be refunded when using the Thrifty Tinkerer buff, so gunpowder, explosive, sulfur. You'll see that a couple of times in here. Same thing for the duplicator, we won't duplicate those items. Woodcutting tools, tools that meet the whitelist requirements and work with the reduced durability ability. Hatchet, salvage axe, stone hatchet and chainsaw, so these ones here will benefit from the durability benefit. Mining tools, same sort of thing, the durability perk, and same for skinning tools. And that's it for the blacklist and whitelist settings. Effect settings, these are just simply the effects that run when certain things happen, such as the instant repair effect for the car, for the repairability in the vehicle tree. Level up effect, node unlock effect, and the node level effect. You can change these to whatever you like. Better chat settings. So these are just simply really formatting and coloring for different types of for the better chat settings for players. Set null to disable. So basically, if you don't want better chat to work and show levels, you just set this to null, and it won't do its thing. But basically, when a player chats in game, if it'll show me, you can see. Nope, it's because I'm in admin mode. No, it's not. Because I've got admin mode enabled. Sorry. If I didn't have admin mode enabled, I'd basically have a title that said my level. So yeah, so basically it just shows you my level. So 0 is the color value and 1 is the play level. And this color value is in hex. You adjust this in right here. So default color for better chat XP titles, and the better chat XP title for play who is a max level. Loot settings. So we have mining luck loot tables, woodcutting luck loot table, skinning luck loot table, and fishing luck loot table. All of them are exactly the same thing by default. Feel free to change them and add to them as you please. Whitelist of loot crates to trigger the spawn chance for components, electronics, and scrap. Set to null to not use a whitelist, which means any crate that a player loots, which is probably not ideal, but yeah, pretty much most of the big ones are in there, but you can add any missing ones in there as you please. We have ultimate settings. These are all the settings for all of the different ultimates. So we have the background color for the ultimate node, ultimate settings for woodcutting. We have what XP for each tree that the perk cuts down. Recommend setting that to false because it just becomes a ridiculously sweaty grinder for XP. Distance from the player, so the radius from which trees will be cut down. We have the ultimate settings for mining. Distance from the player, radius that the nodes will appear, cooldown for how long it lasts for, and how long they can use the ability for. How many seconds should the marked ores appear on the player's HUD? The text size that appears for those HUD icons. The chat command for the ability. Automatically trigger the mining ultimate when the player equips a pickaxe. So if you want the pickaxe just to automatically changing to a pickaxe to automatically trigger that mining ultimate if the player has it. Set that to true. And list of tools to trigger the ultimates. These ones, it'll only these particular things get equipped or made active. Vehicle settings for ultimate settings for vehicles. Reduction percentage. So you can see here it's a full 1.0 reduction, which means it's 100% damage reduction for the vehicle damage reduction perk. If you only want 50% reduction, you can set to 0.5. Ultimate settings for medical. Chance for the player to resurrect out of 100, so by default it's a 50% chance. Delay between resurrections after a successful resurrection, so player can't do it again for 20 minutes. Ultimate settings for harvesting. Chat command that players can use to set their plant genes. This is the set genes command we saw before. This is the cooldown if you want to have, if you don't want to allow players to basically plant genetically modified plants over and over again. Setting it to 0.0 means that any seed player places down will be set with the genetic composition of their ultimate. If you have a cooldown at all, it means that the first one will be set with the genetic composition, but any subsequent ones would be standard vanilla rolls. And then we notify the player in chat when they go on cooldown, which is recommended. Ultimate settings for Scavenger. List of items that you don't want the perk to recycle. So this is the ultimate one where it automatically shreds things for you, the shredder perk. So we don't want it to recycle low-grade food into animal fat. We don't want it to recycle targeting computers or CCTV cameras. Scrap items with a unique name, false. Scrap items with a non-default skin, false. So if you want to, this kind of avoids scrapping item perked items or epic loot items or any other custom items that get put into barrels. Ultimate settings for combat. What scale of damage should the player receive as health? By default it's 0.01, so it's 1% of health. 1% damage is given as health. Should the healing effect work against players, animals, or scientists? Set to false for anyone you don't want. List of weapon prefabs, not items that will not trigger the heal. So this is more for things like grenades or explosives that hit multiple enemies at once and can really heal a player up. Allow fire-based damage to heal players. You can set this to false if you don't want, like Incin rockets or molotovs to heal players. Set it to true if you do. Ultimate setting for skins. How long should each buff last for? So these are the animal-based buffs: so bear, chicken, boar, stag, wolf, and polar bear. These are how long each of the buffs last for. A bit of information, a bit of settings about the buffs themselves. The wolf perk, what health scale bonus should the player receive per team member nearby? So we give him an extra 25% health for every team member that's within the distance. How close do the teammates need to be in order to contribute to the perk radius? By default it's 30. Maximum health of the overshield for the bear perk, which is actually meant to be the polar bear perk. So it's actually 50, so 50 health. Stag perk, maximum distance that the player can detect dangerous entities from, which is the radius. By default it's 30. Time between procs, 10 seconds. Draw enemy locations, true. If you don't want them to be drawn, set to false, and they'll just get the text letting them know that a neutral player is nearby. Boar perks, blacklisted components for the boar the boar buff. So this one here will basically allow any components to be found, unless it's on the blacklist. Chance when collecting mushrooms and berries that a player percentage. So by default it's 2% chance that a player will receive components when collecting berries and mushrooms. Minimum quantity give is 1, maximum quantity give is 4. So they could potentially get 4 windmills, if 4 targeting computers or something like that if you're lucky enough. Ultimate settings for buildcraft. Chance that a card with lower access will successfully unlock the door. Card is damaged regardless. So if you don't want buildcraft to be 100% chance, you can reduce the percentage. By default it's 100%. Notify the player when the ultimate fails is set to true. Ultimate settings for raiding. So we've got command to call in the MLRS, which is the strike command. Maximum duration that the raiding ultimate can be active for, which is 30 seconds. If they don't use it within 30 seconds, they can rerun the command in order to use it again. Otherwise, if they do use it, it puts them on cooldown. Cooldown between uses is in minutes. How long between each update tick when targeting? So basically every single second it's going to update the player's HUD and fill in that little bar which has their targeting acquisition. How many ticks are required for the targeting to be successful? So by default these two values get added together, so multiplied by each other. So 1 second per tick for 5 ticks is a 5-second targeting time. If you wanted to do 10 ticks at 0.5 seconds, that would also be 10-second targeting time. How many rockets should be fired when an ultimate is successful? 6 by default, but again you can change that. Effects to run when the player is successfully acquired, when the target is successfully acquired. Leave blank if you don't want an effect. So that's that little grrr sound you heard me run when the MLRS started launching. Delay between each rocket when the barrage starts. This is how many seconds before each rocket is launched. Allow the double explosion chance buff to trigger with this ultimate and set to false by default. Otherwise the MLRSs can potentially explode twice, which would be brutal. Miscellaneous settings. We have bot respawn profiles and XP lists. So as bot respawn gets loaded in and NPCs get killed, if skill tree doesn't contain the list currently, what it'll do is it'll add the NPC as a bot respawn NPC, and you can edit the XP lists in there. Otherwise, you can manually put them in. And what it is basically the key and value pair is the profile, and then the XP received as a value. So for example, bot profile 1 and then XP is 100, which means you get 100 XP for killing any NPC relating to bot profile 1. Human NPC's name that can be used to open the skill tree. So if you have a human NPC plugin running and you want to make it so players can't use a chat command to open it, you can give it to you can make it so the specific human NPC can do it. Should we add a button to the pump bar to open the skill tree? Yes, I mean, why not set it to true? It means that players can click on the pump bar and it opens up the skill tree menu. Should skill tree call out to other plugins before it starts modifying the value of items? Required for plugins that need pre-modified items. I can't remember why I put this in, but I'm sure I set it to false for a reason. NPC spawn. This is the one by this gentleman's name who I can just never pronounce. Basically same as bot respawn, give XP based on the name of the NPC spawn rather than scientist type, so we override the scientist values. And there's a dictionary of NPC profile names and XP values associated with them, so harbor event and all that other shit can be added in there. So I wanted to really add some support for these plugins because they're really cool, really popular, and I had a lot of requests for it, so they're in there. We have skill tree, which is just basically all of the different nodes: mining, woodcutting, harvesting, medical, combat, buildcraft, scavenging, vehicles, cooking, underwater, and raiding. So many of them. And then under that you have all your nodes as well. And then we have, oh sorry, I better go into it. So if you want to modify these values, it's really simple. So you can disable particular nodes by setting the value to false. Wouldn't recommend changing the node names. If you want to change the name of the node, you would want to copy it and then have this one disabled and then have the new one there with a different name, because the plugin looks for the default nodes and re-adds them if they're missing. As part of the update process, unless you turn that feature off. This is the max level, so you can adjust this to whatever you like. This is the tier that it's available at, so it just adds it into the relevant row. This is the modifier given per level unlocked, so by default this is 5%, 0.05. This is the buff type key and the value, which is it means it's a percentage buff, whereas there are other buffs which are on-off buffs, IO buffs like this one. So either they exist or they don't exist. We have the icon URL, which is the picture, and the skin. The skin is also the picture, but that's if we're using the item ID as the caching method, which is recommended. And then we can have permissions assigned to that as well, which I'll cover in the next section for custom nodes and trees. Leveling information. So this is if you want to adjust the grind, change the level values, you can. This is the XP you can kind of expect, capping out at 2 million XP. Sorry, 204. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on. 2 million XP, approximately, for level 100. This is a lot. But if you want to make it more grindy, you can lower that value, increase that value, so it changes a bit. I'll add a link to the calculation. I ripped it off the internet. I'm not good with math, so I'll add a link to the calculation. You can see how the actual table works and what the values get changed to. But this has actually been fixed in 1.3.0, so if you do adjust the Y value, then your XP will be accurate. Notification settings. So we have the support for the Notify plugin, and these are the settings. These are basically just the settings pertaining to that. So look at the Notify plugin to make sense of these. Yeah, but the Notify plugin is really cool. It does work really well with this. So that's it for the configuration. We're going to move on to the next section, which is basically adding custom nodes and trees. Okay, so we're going to add a custom skill tree and skill node in here. Let's give an example of how that's done. So the starting point here is we want to kind of grab one that already exists, just to get the formatting and syntax and everything else. So we're going to grab the rating tree. I'm going to grab this all the way to the bottom. So we'll just grab it, Control C, and then we're going to put a comma next to the bottom syntax, which I think this was the curly brace here, yep. And then we're going to paste it. I'm then going to change this to, I'm going to base this one of item perks, so I'm going to call this one item underscore perks. I'm going to delete pretty much all these nodes because I just simply don't need them. And I'm going to make sure it's set to enabled as true. Make sure the node, and then obviously we've got the nodes and everything else under it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back up to cooking and grab the cooking perm, the mighty chef, and I'm going to put a command in the sales page, which is how you can generate this buff here as a reference, and then we're going to paste it and over the top of Trap Evader. Cool. Okay. So that's the foundation of our new tree, remembering that any spaces need to be underscores, and then this is the foundation of our perk. So we're going to call this one, this one's going to be based off my item perks plugin, which is going to give us access to recycling. So we're going to say item enhance recycler. And this one's going to basically allow us to, allow the player to recycle items. So I'm going to set the max level to 1, set the tier to 1. I'm going to leave key and value as permission because this is just purely a permission-based plugin. So pure permission-based buff. Whereas if I wanted to add some existing buffs from skill tree, I can do that and then add the permissions on top, so that the player will receive all of it. The skin ID, we're going to change that. So I'm going to grab the skin ID icon from my item perks plugin, add that there. We're not going to change the icon URL because I don't use the URL myself, but if you are using URLs and not the Steam IDs, then you need to make sure you change this instead of that. The description, this is obviously what players are going to see and what they're going to, this is going to tell them what the perk is. So all I'm going to do is going to change this to provides you with the ability to recycle enhanced equipment for enhancement kits. So super simple. And then for the permissions list. Now because I've only got one max level of 1, I'm going to delete level 2 because it's obviously not relevant anymore. And then I'm going to change the permission from cooking.instance to itemperks.recycle. And then we're going to change the name. This is what's displayed on the the player's UI. So enhanced recycler. Hang on. Enhanced item recycler. And that's pretty much it. So what's going to happen here is the plugin is going to, when we save this, it's going to, okay, and it should it should replace the name in language. So when this runs, it's going to create a new skill tree node that gives that's going to come with a new skill tree called item perks, and it's going to give a new level 1 node called enhanced recycler. So let's save it. Let's reload our plugin. Hopefully we don't have any syntax errors, and let's give her a bell. So /st, navigate right to the end there, and there she is. Item perk skill tree. I probably need to go into language and change that. Give me a sec. And there it is, skill tree. Here's a language file here. Enhance recycler and item perks. I need to just simply do that. O.reload skill tree, and that name should be all fixed up now. There it is, item perk skill tree. So you can see here when we click on the node, we have enhanced recycler, which is the name of it. Provides you with the ability to recycle enhanced equipment for the enhancement kits. And then we have, yeah. So when I level it up, you can see perms enhance item recycler. And I now have the permissions to do enhanced item recycling. So if I look at my perms list here, look for item perks, recycler granted. Done. Easy. So really simple stuff. But all the same things apply. So you need to have 5 level 1 points to be able to do 5 levels at level 2 and 10 for level 3. And obviously aren't any ultimates. So, but I mean you can put ultimates on there if you wanted to. Just take one of the other ultimates from a different perk. From a different tree. So yeah, that's adding custom trees and buffs in a nutshell. I hope it helps, and look forward to some cool shit that you guys make with it. Alright guys, that's it for the skill tree showcase for now. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was informative. If you have any suggestions, any feedback, any concerns, you're welcome to get in touch with me on any of the sales pages or on my Discord. My Discord's probably one of the best ways to get in touch for support. So I highly recommend you join it. Otherwise, yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy it. I've put a lot of work into this. Thank you to everyone who's given me feedback, helped me test it, give me ideas for skills. It's been really appreciative, and I think what we've kind of built here is truly amazing. There's so much you can do with it, so malleable, and some of the ideas that you guys are coming up with are just insane. So I really love seeing it. Keep them coming, and enjoy, guys. Cheers.